But yesterday, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury and this morning the Secretary of State himself were unable to say whether the government would deliver on 2.5% in the current Parliament.
This is Shadow Defence Secretary James Cartledge about to get taught a lesson on the legacy of Tory commitment to defence from Labour Defence Secretary John Healey.
Mr. Speaker, 14 years his Conservative government had to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, and it wasn't a plan or a pathway from the last government, as the Shadow Defence Secretary tries to claim. It was a political ploy. It was announced 4 weeks before they then called the general election. It was unfunded. It was a con on the armed forces and on the British people, who gave their answer emphatically by sweeping away Tory MPs in many of the proudest military communities and constituencies across the country. Mr. Speaker, on his accusations about a total spending freeze, we are putting in place, and I am putting in place, a grip on out-of-control spending that the last government left. We're securing value for money, we're cutting waste, and we're getting a grip of defence spending in a way that his government did not. On the continuous education allowance, we greatly value this allowance. We greatly recognise the role it plays in helping avoid the disruption of children's education of serving personnel. And in line with how the allowance operates already, we will continue to pay up to 90% of private school fees following the VAT increase in January. So by uprating the cap, we take account of any increase in spending. And on the Chagos Islands, of course I know the details because I was heavily involved in the negotiations. This secures Britain's military base. It secures a military base for our US allies, which is why they welcomed it so strongly. And I've said to the Shadow Secretary, and I've said to this House, when it debates the treaty, will have that full information. And nobody, Mr. Speaker, knows better the defence inheritance that 14 years of the Conservative government have left in the last 4 months than the Shadow Defence Secretary. He was the Defence Minister at the heart of the problems, with billion-pound black holes, service morale at record lows, a crisis in recruitment and retention of personnel. Never again must a government leave our armed forces in a worse state than when they found them. And this is a government that will make this country more secure at home and strong abroad.
Click here for Lee Anderson is as thick as wood.